Well, hello everyone. I want to welcome you all to our second in a series of webinars or meetings. I'm Wendy Shi. I'm from UCLA. I'm representing our Autism Research Consortium on Communication ARC. This is a consortium that's funded by HRSA, and our goal is to connect researchers, community partners nationwide to generate innovative evidence-based approaches to communication and language opportunities for autistic individuals. We host several webinars throughout the year on topics related to our goals. This webinar is hosted in collaboration with ARC Behavioral Health and ARC Service Care. Okay. Our partners include these academic sites on the left: Drexel, UNC, UC Davis, UCLA, Kansas, Minnesota State, and University of Rochester. And at each of these academic sites, we have community partners. These are local agencies and groups that partner with us around our shared goals in research and dissemination. And on our right are our community partners here in LA. I want to make sure that everyone knows about some of our upcoming ARC events. Our next webinar will be this fall. The exact date will be released soon and posted on our website. Doctors Len Abadoodle and Nancy Brady will be presenting on assessments for non-speaking or minimally verbal children. They have developed assessments for assessing language in minimally verbal individuals. So please stay tuned for our upcoming events and join us. A little bit of housekeeping. This is a Q&A, so we do want you to be interactive and talk, but please mute your microphone when the speaker is speaking. If you want, you can post your questions in the comments if you want to, and you can turn off your camera if you want to as well. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker for today. It's my pleasure to introduce Daniel Almirall, Associate Professor in the Department of Statistics and co-founder of the D3 Center at the University of Michigan. Dr. Almirall is a leading expert in causal inference, adaptive interventions, and innovative randomized trial designs. His work has helped advance the development and evaluation of precision-based interventions for a wide range of health disorders to improve the adoption and implementation of evidence-based interventions. Today, we're super fortunate to have Dr. Almirall with us for our Q&A sessions on smart designs. So this is a Q&A, so please ask questions. Please join me in welcoming him.
All right. Should I take it away, Wendy?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So first stop, Wendy, is make sure you can see my slide. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I see a bunch of people online. I see G, I see Megan, I see Penelope. Hello, everybody. Julia, Catherine, Carly. Hi, everyone. As far as I'm concerned, if I only give this talk without a discussion, this is not as much fun as an interactive, dynamic discussion. So Wendy asked me to keep my comments to 15 minutes maximum. And she also asked you to do some readings ahead of time, which I hope you did. And even if you didn't, that's okay. You could still kind of ask me questions. So I'm going to get going on my 15 minutes. I'm going to hit my timer right now. Okay. And I'm going to give you a quick crash course. So the first thing I wanted to share is that there's essentially two parts to these 15 minutes. And this is actually how I want all of you to think when you use these methods. First, I want to talk a little bit about what is an adaptive intervention. And this has nothing to do with research, okay? So you see me typing no research there? All right. And then the second part is, what is a SMART? A SMART is something we use only when we're doing research about adaptive interventions. And before I launch into this, I wanted to alert you to, Wendy wanted me to make sure you had the link and the QR code to our website. So I'm the co-founder, and until 2025, I was co-director of D3C. And everything we do at D3C is about adaptive interventions. Go to our website. That's where you can learn more. You can learn about, we have hundreds of modules, training curriculums, so you can learn more about adaptive interventions and SMARTs. And by the way, what I'm talking about today is just the tip of the iceberg. We actually have many more kinds of adaptive intervention designs and many more kinds of sequentially randomized trial designs. All right, you guys ready? Okay. All right, first of all, what is an adaptive intervention? And I'm going to try to do this in like 5 slides because Wendy said, Danny, you cannot go over 15 minutes. So let me first talk about what is an adaptive intervention. The most important thing is an adaptive intervention is an intervention design. It's something a clinician does. It's not an experiment. Later on, when we talk about smarts, we'll talk about experiments. But we can't talk about smarts until we talk about what it is we're interested in. So an intervention design is something a clinician uses in the real world to help little kids with autism or whatever we're trying to help the little kids with. And it is not an experimental design, which is an approach used by the scientist to answer scientific questions. So what is an adaptive intervention? If it's not a research design, what is it? It's a treatment protocol that guides how dynamic information about a little kid is used to decide whether and how to intervene. So let me show you an example. And actually, for my first part of the talk, I'm using an ADHD example. And for the second part of the talk, I'll use an autism example. So let me show you this example. So this is children with ADHD. And here I'm showing you an oversimplified example because I'm just teaching you the basics. So if I have little kids with ADHD, I might start with low dose meds. And then maybe every single month of the school year, I might, starting at week 8. So I won't start monitoring until like 2 months into the medication. You know what I mean? So maybe 2 months in, I might have the teacher every single month of the school year, for the whole school year, I might have the teacher rate the child as to whether they respond or not. And of course, I can spend 10 minutes telling you what that rating is, but just think of it as being an impairment rating scale, a little checklist that the teacher does. And if the kid is showing signs of response, then you stay the course. No problem. You don't change anything. You stay on low dose meds. But if the little kid at any one of those months triggers a no, the child is not responding, then we might add behavioral intervention. This is just one overly simple example of an adaptive intervention. And what you see here is you see a sequence of decisions. The first decision is, what do I do at the beginning? The second decision is, what do I do later? And the thing is, the thing I do later, whether or not I offer behavioral intervention, will depend on whether the child responds. That's why it's called an adaptive intervention, because we adapt the provision of treatment depending on the changing needs of the child. Okay? That's all I have for you today. That is an example of an adaptive intervention. And what I hope happens over the next few minutes is you start asking me a bunch of questions. Now, I still have about 8 to 9 more minutes before Wendy says, Danny, stop talking. So now I'm going to shift gears a little bit. All right. And I have a bunch of slides ready to go to answer all of your questions. So now I'm going to shift gears. And by the way, a lot of this is mirroring what the reading materials I sent you. Okay. So now I'm going to spend the rest of my 8 minutes on talking about a smart. Okay, so now I'm totally changing gears. I'm changing gears from what the clinician was doing, which was the adaptive intervention, to what the researcher is doing, which is a smart design. So what is a smart in 5 to 7 minutes? So here we go. To motivate this smart, I'm going to show you yet another adaptive intervention, just so you get a twofer in 15 minutes. Here I have children with minimally verbal children with ASD. I might start at week 0 with discrete trials training. And then at week 6, I might be monitoring whether the little kiddo is a responder or a slow responder. And then if the kid is a responder, I might stay the course. But if the kid is a slow responder, I might add Jasper. You can see that this is very similar to the ADHD example. And I've now introduced for you a second adaptive intervention. But what's the deal? What am I going to say more about this? Well, do some kids need more? Do some other kids need less? Right? And you might even imagine a different adaptive intervention, that one that starts with Jasper and takes the slow responders and adds DTT. So the moment you start doing that as a scientist, the moment you say, wait a minute, Danny, do I start with DTT or do I start with Jasper? Notice I'm now showing you a third adaptive intervention. The moment you start asking questions like that, that tells me you are a scientist, because that tells me you have a question about how to create a really good adaptive intervention. So notice the first question we've stumbled upon here is, in a world where we augment slow responders with both Jasper and DTT, you might still ask, well, wait a minute, Danny, which one do I start with? Are you guys starting to see the questions? You might have other questions too. You might say, Danny, wait a minute. I don't even want to do adaptive. Maybe some kids just need Jasper alone for 16 weeks. And yet other kids might need DTT alone for 16 weeks. So now you're really thinking hard. Now you're really asking questions. Which kids need which of these four interventions? The moment you start asking questions like that, you have become an optimization scientist. What are optimization questions? Optimization questions are questions inside of the intervention. They're questions about how to make the intervention better. And in this talk today, it's all about how to make the adaptive intervention better. So for example, typical optimization questions are, how long should I offer treatment? What tactics should I use for non-responders? What tactics should I use for responders? How do I re-engage a kiddo or a family that's not showing up to treatment or not really doing the homework assignments? What is the most effective delivery location? And there's even other ones, right? Like, how do I define non-response? What is the more effective and cost-effective intervention? Who should I step down to for? And so on. The moment you start asking questions like this, you're no longer a standard evaluation scientist. You've become an optimization scientist. So in the final 4 minutes that I have, I wanted to show you what a SMART looks like and how a SMART can be used to answer optimization questions. So a SMART is the opposite. It's an experimental design. It's not an intervention design. It's something a researcher does. It's not something a clinician does. You guys got that? That's so important. And the whole goal of a SMART is to inform the construction of a really high quality adaptive intervention by answering those optimization questions. All right. So I'm going to show you a SMART design. And this is one that Connie Kazari and Wendy and many others on this call did. And I think it might have been 2012 that we first designed it. And we now have one paper published on this trial. This is a design where we first took all these little kiddos who were minimally verbal and had ASD, and we randomized them to whether or not we start with DTT or Jasper. Because that was one of our questions. What do we start with? Believe it or not, we also had questions about what to do with responders. Do we add parent training? Do we train the parent? Do we go through the effort of training the parents for kiddos showing early signs of response? That was a really cool question because during these first 6 weeks, the parents were actually watching the DTT and the Jasper treatment through a one directional window. So by the time we get to week 6, if the kid is responding, we ask the question, should we augment this DTT, this intervention that's working, or Jasper that's working with parent training? But we notice these are optimization questions. So they're all about what do I do for each specific kiddo? And then of course we had what to do with slow responders. If the kid was a slow responder to DTT or to Jasper, we asked the question, do we stay the course? Because maybe we need more than 6 weeks. Maybe we need the full 16 weeks. Or do we augment with the other one? So if we started on DTT, do we augment with Jasper? And if we started on Jasper, do we augment with DTT? This concludes my 15-minute crash course. Wendy, notice I'm staying faithful to your marching orders because I love Wendy and I don't want to get her upset. So I am now finished giving you the crash course, but I have like 40 to 50 other backup slides here that I'm prepared to answer any slides, any questions you have. So let's open it up. Right, Wendy? Are we opening this up? So let's have a discussion about adaptive interventions or SMARTs. You guys ready? Let's do it. Does anyone have questions? Hopefully you came prepared with some question for me. Wendy, can people just jump in with questions? Yeah,
Absolutely. Q&A. Everyone jump in.
yeah. Does anyone have any questions for me? And if you don't, I can keep giving a talk, but Wendy told me not to give a talk. Does anyone have questions about what an adaptive intervention is or what a SMART is? If you don't, then I'm going to pop quiz you.
People ask questions. Let's not get quizzed.
Oh my goodness. I see some people want to ask questions like Megan and G Yang, but they're maybe they're nervous or something. I promise I won't bite.
I'll ask a question, Danny. It's
Yeah.
Connie.
Yes.
So I think one thing that's kind of confusing about smarts or adaptive designs is that they're really not randomized control trials. They are a different way of thinking about developing or optimizing, as you say, a series of, sequential interventions or combinations or timing or something, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
can you kind of uh, give like a way to think about sort of as you want to build some notion of intervention and then how you can test it with an RCT later, maybe?
Yeah. Let me see if I have a slide on that topic, but you're absolutely right. So I don't know how a lot of you were trained, but the world of randomized trials has changed a lot over the last 20 years. We
Hmm.
used to only have two kinds of studies that someone, like, for example, someone researching autism would do. We used to live in a world where you would do either a pilot, like a preparatory thing, like as part of your K award, or a two-arm, or multi-arm randomized controlled confirmatory trial. Notice the word that my choice of words here, confirmatory trial. But we no longer live in that world. And let me see if I have a slide to show you this. Okay, you guys. Like for example, like you might have done a study like this. Here it is, Connie.
Hmm.
That's all research on adaptive interventions require smart. So just ignore, if you don't want to read all this text, I just want to bring your attention to this picture. Does everybody see this picture here?
Hmm.
This picture is a two-arm randomized trial where all the little kiddos that were minimally verbal, half of them, say you had 100, half of them were assigned to this top part, which is one adaptive intervention that starts with DTT and augments with Jasper, and the other half of the kids went to usual care. This, what you're looking at right here, you guys. Oh wait, you guys aren't seeing? Wait, hold up. Are you guys seeing my slide? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
This thing you're looking at here is a standard two-arm randomized trial. This is not a smart. Connie's right. And why would you do this? Well, I don't have a problem with people doing this. This is a great design. This is a two-arm randomized trial design, but this is a confirmatory trial. This means you've already decided that you want to move this intervention right here, the one I'm circling, that you believe we want to move that one forward, ready to the confirmatory trial phase. Smarts are not like this. We're not confirming or evaluating an intervention. Instead, smarts are asking, what should this intervention be? You know what I'm saying, you guys? Do you guys see the difference? So a smart, which I showed you earlier, like this thing, is an example of a optimization randomized trial rather than a confirmatory randomized trial. In a smart, we're asking questions inside the intervention because we want to make it even better. Does that make sense? Like, for
Hmm.
example, we might want to know whether some kids ought to start with DTT and other kids start with Jasper, right? Because some kids might benefit more from DTT right out of the gates, and other kids might benefit more with Jasper. Well, if we had those kind of questions, which we did in this study, we would do a SMART instead of an evaluation randomized trial. Let me stop there. Does everyone understand that question, that contrast I'm making? Is it clear to everyone on the call?
It's clear to me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Carly
Carly's
has one.
asking,
Carly has a question.
yeah.
Do smart designs require a bigger sample size?
Where's Carly? Can I see Carly? Carly. Carly. Hello, Carly. I don't know if you're able to unmute your video so I can see you. It just makes it more fun when I can see people's smiles. So Carly, it really depends on the scientific question as to whether a smart requires bigger sample size. I'm sorry that my answer is not a clear yes or a clear no. The answer is it depends. Most of the time, Smarts are about the same size as a regular two-arm randomized trial, but not always. And it depends on the kind of question. So, Carly, I know you're not showing me your smile, but if you read any of the sort of the papers and the modules I had Wendy forward you, you'll see that in a smart I could ask many kinds of questions. Like for example, there's a slide and a where I show you different kinds of primary aims. Depending on each of these primary aims, the sample size will depend on which one you choose. So for example, this aim type 1, the sample size formula for aim type 1 is identical to a two-arm sample size calculation for a confirmatory randomized trial. So anyway, Carly, that's my way of saying it depends. Any other questions?
Mm-hmm.
There's one more from Catherine. How
Catherine?
do participants consent to a SMART design, piece by piece or all at once for the potential receiving any of the different potential interventions?
Yeah, this is lovely. Catherine, where are you? Can you show me your smile if you're
She's using computer with no audio and video,
Oh, okay.
unfortunately. So she'll
Okay.
rewatch everything later on.
Okay. Well, hi, Catherine. I wish I could see your smile. So, what a great question. You're talking about the conduct of the smart rather than the design or the analysis. I absolutely, so I'm about to share my colors here. Without a doubt and without hesitation, don't you dare consent piece by piece. If you do that, you've just called on a complete disaster for yourself. So a smart design is just like any other randomized trial. At the beginning up front, you have everyone consent to being part of the entire study. A smart is not, listen to this, this is really subtle but so important. A smart is not two randomized trials mashed together into one. No, 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 no. A SMART is just one trial. And the consent procedures for a SMART, consent procedures are not randomization specific. Consent procedures are study specific. So never in your life, if you ever do a SMART, don't you ever consent for the first randomization and then reconsent later. That is a complete disaster. So what we want is once you consent up front, you have everyone with you. So how do you do it? So you're now wondering, how do you do it? Well, in the consent form, you have to tell the families and tell the kiddos that you will undergo multiple randomizations. You might show them the picture, or you might say, you might end up in any one of these 8 boxes at random. You might say something like that. Every consent form uses different language, so I can't tell you exactly how to do it, but the gist of it is you just have to have the family understand that through a coin flip, through 2 of them in this case, right? Each child will be, in this case, every single child in this example will be randomized twice, right? So you just tell the families, you will be randomized twice. And based on that, you might end up in any of these 8 boxes. Do you consent to that? And then you go box by box, A, B, C, D, and you explain what each of the pathways are. And different people do it differently. Some people call each of these boxes clinical pathways. You know what I mean? Other PIs call them supportive pathways because that's what they are. They're just pathways, right? And you tell the family, look, in one path, you might start with DTT, and if you're doing well, I might end up training you. In a separate pathway, I might start you off on Jasper, and if you need a little bit more support, I might augment you with DTT. And then you get their consent to be part of all the clinical pathways. Let me stop there and make sure everyone understands what I just said. And Catherine, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, it must be fun to write an IRB. I think that's true, Catherine. Let me say also that sometimes if you're worried that somebody doesn't want to do the pathway that they're randomized to, we've had this before where we have done a pilot to ask that exact question. So kind of the feasibility of doing some sequence of interventions, especially in the schools. So we did one where we had parents and paraprofessionals kind of sign off on a SMART for a social skills intervention during recess. And we had questions about whether people would actually add or change something if we told them that the child was responding or not responding well to whatever we were doing. So that was an important first step. We learned a lot from that. So I think that that's a good question to ask if you're worried.
I love that, Connie. Thank you so much. And if you guys go on our website, so yes, Connie and I have done pilot smarts. And that's you want everything to go wrong in a pilot smart, and you want nothing to go wrong in a full scale smart. So any questions you might have about recruiting, consent, are these pathways, clinical pathways, feasible? If you have questions about that, I don't want you doing a full scale smart. That just tells me you need to do a pilot smart first to see what goes wrong. So in a pilot smart, think about it like you might recruit only 20 kids or 15 kids or 30 kids and put them through the smart design just to see what goes wrong. And then what this is a great, and you publish the results of a pilot smart, right? You publish what went wrong. And then the beautiful thing is you come out on the other side with a refined trial and a refined set of interventions that are feasible. And then you write your R1, your full scale R1. And that's what Connie's talking about. And I love pilot studies. I love seeing what goes wrong in a pilot. I get very upset if something goes wrong in a full scale. Connie, you're muted again.
I was going to say there must be other questions because we've talked kind of about the kinds of questions that we might have, but I would imagine that people have lots of different kinds of populations they're working with, and different outcomes, mental health outcomes, or, parenting kinds of outcomes. You can do all different kinds of smarts. Actually, your website, Danny, is just amazing with how many different designs one can think of.
Thank
Um,
you. I appreciate it.
so it's almost anything that you can think up, which is cool.
There's the link to the website if you guys want to dig in and learn more. Um, I used to be the PI, well, until IES had its recent troubles, Institute for Education Sciences, I was the PI of an 11-year training program where we would allow you guys to apply and come to Ann Arbor and spend the whole week with me to learn about smarts. Unfortunately, IES cut all that funding in recent, over the past like 18 to 24 months. It's very sad. So I don't have a workshop for you to apply to yet. I'm trying to get creative about how to kick that back up. But in the meantime, all of the materials I've spent developing over the last 11 years, I put them on my website free for you. And the way I like to do our website until somebody tells me I can no longer do it that way is I don't want to have a paywall or a sign up wall. I truly want to do something for free. Like I don't need your email if you just want to pop in and take it. So if you go to our website, until someone tells me I can no longer do it my way, you don't have to sign up for anything. You can just go and take what you want. So go to our website while you can until someone knocks on my door and says, "No, Danny, you got to start charging for this or whatever." In the meantime, everything is free. All of the materials I developed with Connie's help and everyone else over the last 11 years are on the website. Okay? So go get it. Go get it now. Download it now.
Mhm. So I can't see people. Can you, Wendy? I mean, I think it would be a good opportunity if you have an idea for a smart to pitch that to Danny because he's amazing in terms of just giving you some questions or some things to think about. So if you're thinking about just any idea, like you're wondering, how do we personalize interventions for kids with autism or other disabilities or other, issues? I think it's a huge issue in the field and one we need to tackle in very systematic ways, scientific ways. And this is one opportunity to do that.
I have a question.
Yay. And I think Megan was about to ask one. So you go
Okay.
first, Wendy, and then Megan can jump in. All right, go.
So Danny, you're super busy. So I was wondering if you have a listserv for other early career researchers that could connect with other people who have experience as SMART and that would be willing to serve like as methodologists or consultant on their future
Mm.
grants.
Oh yeah. Well, you're one of them, Wendy. Right. My career would essentially disappear if I'm everyone's consultant, right? I don't want to do that, right? So that's why we have Wendy, who she's been training with us. She's been doing, I don't know, Wendy, you're like on your eighth smart or something. So Wendy knows how to do these things. And on my website, on the D3C, if you go to the people page, you'll see listings of other people that are not just me. In fact, I'm no longer even co-director of the D3C. I purposefully stepped down, right, to let the next generation of people. So you can go on our website and go to the people page and you'll see my students like Gabe Durham. You'll see all sorts of people on there who all are experts on smart designs. And smarts are pretty, they've become popular over possibly in part due to our training programs and working with Connie, they've become a little more popular. So there are more people around the country. In fact, even people outside of our center, like for example, Eric Labor at North Carolina State, Nick Seawald at University of Pennsylvania. These are names of people that you can totally reach out to them. Kelly Kidwell here at Michigan, but at the School of Public Health, you can reach out to her. So if you just do a Google search, David Vaughn at the University of Minnesota, and the names go on and on and on, because we've been training people, right? We've spent 24 years training people so that we have it's kind of like a body of experts. So um, don't be bashful. These people are our trainees, our previous students, the people on our website, they want you to contact them. So contact them. They want to be part of very innovative studies. So give those people an email and maybe have your top three. And if one says no, you go to the next one down the list. Wendy, does that help answer your question a little bit? Yeah, that's great. Don't be bashful. Also, one more thing. One more thing. All of you should be, if you guys are domain scientists, so I call domain scientists people like Connie, right? Where you focus on a particular domain. In Connie's example, she's an autism researcher. You might be a mental health researcher and so on. So if you're a domain scientist, one of the most important career things you need to do is cultivate your relationship with a statistician, a biostatistician, or a quantitative psychologist. You need to cultivate that. The other option you have is if you already have cultivated that relationship with someone, just have them read all of our tutorial papers. You don't have to go to someone who's already an expert on smarts. Smarts are not that complicated, you guys. You just have to do the reading and do the work. But I think I've written now like 5 or 6 tutorials on smarts. One of them was funded by the IES. You'll find it on our website. It's like a book-long tutorial. And by now, any quant that you are cultivated a relationship with can do a smart. Absolutely. So that's the other way, is just give them the space to train up. That's the other route you can do. You don't have to find a new colleague. Am I making sense, you guys? I hope this is helpful, what I'm saying.
Did Megan wanted to
Megan,
ask her
and
question?
then there's another question and comment.
Yeah, this has been really helpful, and you're so kind at being so willing to share everything and share your knowledge. I have a question. So I've been thinking about training parents of kids with disabilities about navigating services, and one intervention that we've done is kind of giving parents a 24-hour training about their rights and services. And another intervention we've done is about assigning families a navigator to help them navigate service delivery systems. And if you ask families, though, who have gone through both, which one they would prefer, by and large, they say they'd rather have a navigator. But a navigator is like very expensive to scale up. It's just not a cost efficient solution. And a lot of families can just do the training and they would get what they need, and that would be much more cost effective. And then isolating people who need more intensive support. So I would like to test that, like whether or not I can predict on the front end who would need which one versus whether or not parents themselves would appropriately self-select into the right group. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah,
Is
it does
that
make a lot of sense.
possible? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's spend just 2 minutes deconstructing your kind of your design for a second,
Yeah.
just for illustrative purposes for everyone on the call. you've offered up two interventions.
Mhm.
And in one world, that Megan might envision, we just leave it up to the preference of the parent to choose whether they want one or the other. But you already said that's impossible
Yeah.
because most parents will choose wanting a navigator,
Mhm.
and that's prohibitive. I call that a cost prohibitive intervention. So you can't do that. So
Right.
instead, Megan Burke is envisioning a different world. She's envisioning a world where the parent shows up,
Mhm.
and perhaps based on the things you know about the parent and their kid's disorder, right?
Yeah.
Like a battery of things, you
Right.
might then have a clinical decision that says, oh, you're definitely the kind of parent that needs a navigator, or oh, you're the kind of parent that doesn't. So that is the world Megan now envisions, right? Okay,
Yeah.
great. So all I did so far is I recapped your question through my lens. At,
Great.
at this point, Megan, at this point in your questioning, believe it or not, you do not yet have an adaptive intervention.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, you have an extremely novel design, but it's only one decision. It's at the
Yeah.
beginning, do I
Okay.
do a navigator or not? So
Mhm.
at this point, you have a deliciously interesting question. It is an optimization question. It is. It is a question about personalizing treatment. It is. But it is not yet a question about an adaptive intervention. So why is that? Because you only have one decision.
Right.
So suppose you had another decision 5 weeks out or 12 weeks out that said, okay, regardless of whether I started with the navigator or not, if the parent is still struggling or hasn't yet
Mhm.
enrolled in services, what do I do next? Do I do C or D?
Right.
Then you got yourself an adaptive intervention. And then, and only then, you might
Mhm.
be reaching for a smart. You got
Yeah.
it?
Mhm.
So I won't belabor this any longer so that other people can ask questions, but you are on the right track in the sense that in 1 minute, you and I have just discussed one piece of what's necessary for an adaptive intervention, but you're not quite yet in the adaptive intervention land. Am
Yeah.
I am I making sense?
Yeah. 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 Yes, that was helpful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's really beautiful. That's great, Megan. It's great. Any other questions? This is fun, right? You guys having fun? I'm having a good time.
Chi,
So one
what-
question in the comments, once a SMART identifies the best adaptive intervention, what's the next step?
Yeah, I love that question. So, um, so G, let's pretend you did a SMART and you found the best adaptive intervention. G, if you are interested in doing a confirmatory randomized trial, then that'll be your next study. Meaning you'll take that best intervention from your SMART. Your SMART is now done and over with, right? You've published it. You found it. You found the personalized sequences of treatments for each kiddo. I'm making that all up. And now you have it in your hand. You have the best adaptive intervention, best in quotes, best in the sense of the best one coming out of the SMART. And now you're ready. You are ready to do a confirmatory trial. Well, if you're interested in doing a confirmatory trial, then that'll be your next study. But guess what? If you are not interested in doing a confirmatory trial, then don't. In other words, what am I saying, G? You are a scientist. You are independent. Danny does not require, Danny, one of the developers of the SMART design, does not require that G go off and do a confirmatory trial if G doesn't want to. In other words, if you decide you want to move on to something else and do another SMART in some other area, maybe like, minimally verbal kids with Down syndrome, whatever the case may be, right? You've moved on to another optimization question. Somebody else, like at University of North Carolina, or somebody else might pick up the G adaptive intervention and they might do a confirmatory trial and maybe just invite you to be a consultant. But what's my point, G? My point is there are no rules here. You are a scientist, you ask questions, and you answer them. Does that make sense, G? Am I clear? Like, I am not going to ever tell someone they must do the confirmatory trial afterward. I'm not going to do that. You
Yes,
got it?
yes. Yeah, I got it. Thank you, Danielle. I before you explain that, I just wonder, or if after finish all the process, if I need some like experimental to compare the outcome, if it's
You,
necessary.
you mean like a usual care? Like a usual care?
Yes, or other like compared to the experimental uh to verify if it's really get some it's the best choice to use like DDT or other things. Uh
Right. Well, inside of your smart, let's go back to the smart for a moment. Inside of the smart, okay? Inside of it, okay? I don't know if you know what I mean by that. Inside of the smart, during the analysis of the smart data, the notion of best would inevitably mean that the intervention you've identified, for example, maybe the red one or the blue one, right? You would show the world, hey, world, based on my analysis, the blue intervention, adaptive intervention, E and H, is better than the red one and all of the other ones inside of the smart. So you will come out of a smart with a comparator that you've compared to show that it is best in the universe. What you don't have from the smart is you don't have a usual care comparison,
mm,
right? Unless, and this is a very nuanced concept. Are you ready, G? Unless your usual care comparison happens to be embedded in the smart. Like, for example, are you ready? Suppose that usual care is boxes B and C. Like, let's assume that usual care is DTT for 16 weeks. Well, then in that case, your smart does have the usual care comparison. You know what I mean? Nonetheless, my point, G, is that a smart's purpose is not confirmatory evaluation. I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly. And you, as a scientist, do not need to confirm. One of the things I've seen people try to do, and I recommend strongly against it, notice my words strongly with my little hand coming at the screen. I do not want you guys to have a third arm here that's usual care. Do not do that. Everyone who's tried that in the past has failed miserably. And what you're doing when you do that is you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. You're trying to do an optimization trial and you're trying to do an evaluation trial all in once. Well, what happens to scientists who try to do too much? They do nothing. In other words, it's already hard enough to recruit 189 little kiddos who are minimally verbal. Like, it's ludicrous to think you're going to recruit 189 kiddos who are minimally verbal to a smart and a third arm that has usual care. I recommend strongly against that. That's someone who's trying too hard to do too much. You guys with me? Are you guys following me here? And I feel very strongly about that. I've actually written this up in manuscripts. I don't remember which one, but I explicitly tell people,
Oh my God.
do not do that.
But Danny, I
Yeah,
think
Oh,
that the IES group,
hmm?
though, wanted to do just that. They
Yeah.
wanted no
Well,
treatment
oh,
comparison, right? And it
yeah,
wasn't that what people did. And I agree, we've never done that. We've never done a no treatment comparison. Sometimes I
yeah.
kick myself because we might not have differences in
Right,
the two experimental interventions.
right.
Um, so what happens then? I mean, you don't have that no treatment comparison. You don't know if either of your interventions, which were not better than each other.
Right, right. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, right?
Yeah.
So like in a study like this, like for example, you and I have published the results of this study, where we didn't show big differences between starting with DT and starting with Jasper. However, you and I also haven't finished doing all of the analytics of a smart like this, which is, well, who are the kids who ought to start DTT? Who are the kids who ought to start Jasper? Who are the slow responders who ought to get augmented? And it might well be that when we do that analysis, we come out with a winning adaptive intervention that is even more deeply tailored. So the key though is that, because you and I are in the process of writing those papers, right? So the key though is when you design a study like this, you design it wanting to answer all those questions, and you set yourself up for that kind of success rather than design a study like this, but with the notion of success of a confirmatory trial. We change the notion of success. The notion of success in a SMART is identifying a really good adaptive intervention. That's the notion of success, because there is no other trial design that gives you this kind of data. And so, you know what I mean? And so it's just a different notion of success. Yeah.
Well, let's do that analysis, okay?
Let's do it. Yeah, well, I know Wendy and we've been talking about it. We need to carve out the time to finish it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like G says that's the piece I was missing. G, what piece was it? Because we just shared a lot of thoughts. What can you say out loud? What was the piece you think you got that was missing?
Well, I say this picture aim ASD smart just answer my confusing about um how to compare different treatments or when added something like parent training or Jasper to
Right.
DDT when have the different outcome. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Like, for
very quick
example, that's
picture.
great. I'm glad you're getting a lot of, like, for example, it could be that when Wendy and I and Connie get to that analysis, I don't have I don't have it here. It could be that we find an intervention that is really interesting that says, oh, here it is. Here it is. Here it is. I'm just making this up, G. I'm completely making this up, okay? Connie and I, let me say out loud while I'm being recorded, Connie and I have not done this analysis to know if this is true. This is complete make-believe, okay? But when Connie and I get to it, it could be that we discover that the best intervention, I'm making this up, starts with DTT, and the responders with high parent buy-in ought to add parent training, but the responders with low parent buy-in ought to do either one, right? Right? Notice how there's a new covariate in here. There's a new tailoring variable, parent buy-in. That wasn't part of the design, right? And it could be that if we keep doing that analysis, we might even find another arm down here where some kids at baseline, maybe those who are most severely minimally verbal, need to start on Jasper. Like, I can keep drawing this picture. I might have a very fancy new adaptive intervention. We just haven't done that analysis yet. Am I making sense? So that's the beauty of the SMART. It allows you to come up with something more deeply tailored. The confirmatory randomized trial, this one right here, let me say this very loud and clear, does not allow you to ever come up with new tailoring variables. All you can say from a confirmatory randomized trial is, yes, it worked. No, it didn't. The end. The end. A SMART, totally different. A SMART allows you to discover and find the best adaptive intervention via the coin flips. Because we do the coin flips, we have a gazillion pathways. Gee, am I making sense?
Yes, it's really helpful. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, great. That's terrific.
And thank you, Daniel.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. You're very welcome. I'm glad I'm being helpful. How are we doing on time, Wendy?
We are right on dot.
We're doing good. I'm doing okay. All right. You guys are doing great. Any other questions? This is good. This is great. I'm so happy to be here. I mean, I love this stuff, right? This stuff is so fun to talk about. I have a lucky career. I got lucky, right? I
You
have a
did.
career that's so fun. You know what I mean?
So, Danny, I can talk about a problem. I think that one thing that people worry about is the sample size, and we also worry about that. And we had we did a power analysis. So Danny's got all kinds of ways of checking
Right?
what your power should be. But remember when we did the CINA study, which was all we did was compare kids getting an augmentative device or not within the context of a behavioral intervention,
Oh
just
yeah,
EMT. And
yeah,
we powered it for 90 kids. And this was back in 2008. So we didn't have, big recruitment. We didn't have a pathway yet. And so
right,
we ended up getting 60 across these three sites.
right,
We still got effects on that one.
right,
But it was a very simple SMART, right? So had we had like AIM, ASD, we might not have come up with as much. But we also found, I think that, I mean, we learned from that SMART that about 70% of our kids in that case were responders.
right,
So can you talk, so kind of the metric for response, non-response matters
right.
in terms of your numbers.
Oh, right. Yeah. So these are cool questions Connie's asking for the helpful and for everyone's benefit. So there are some scientific questions. So okay, first of all, let me back up. To be able to answer Connie's question, I got to back up 1 second. There are many types of primary aims. Do you guys see my slides? There are many types of primary aims you might choose when you're designing a SMART. Depending on the type primary aim, notice how I'm caveating everything. Depending on the type primary aim, you will need to know different things. If your primary aim is types 2 or 3, you'll need to know the response rate. What is the response rate or non-response rate, whatever the case may be. And that's what Connie's getting at, is that if my aim type is what do I do among non-responders? Like if your primary aim is among slow responders, do I augment? Well, then in order to do that sample size calculation, you have to give a guess as to the amount of slow responders you're going to have. Is everybody with me? Right? Similarly, if your type of primary aim is one where you compare adaptive interventions, like for example, suppose your primary aim was to compare the red adaptive intervention, A and D, start with DTT. If you're responding, train the parent. If you're not, add Jasper, versus start with Jasper. If you're responding and parent training, if you're not, add DTT. If that's a comparison, again, you would need to know the slow response rate. You guys got it? However, okay, if your primary aim was this one right here, which is all the red versus all the blue, which is what do I start with? Right? This one, aim type 1, you do not need to know the response rate. So all of this is to say, you guys, you have to go read. I don't have time to teach you all of it, but you have to kind of go read the papers and the tutorials we've written. Depending on your primary question, you may or may not need a really good guess at your response rate. Am I making sense? And this is my way of answering Connie's question about the response rate matters. Yes, it matters. And it matters, it always matters. But in terms of the sample size, it matters depending on what your primary question is. Am I making sense, you guys? Megan, G, am I making sense?
But Danny, I think so you kind of want it to be 40-60 response, non-response, or 50-50, or in our case, we had 70 non-responders, slow responders, and 30% responders. So
Oh,
but our primary focus was on those kids who were slow responders. So we had
right,
70%. So we had more.
right,
So again, these are all the kind of things that you think about, so that you
right.
have enough of those adaptive interventions
Oh,
to look at,
I see
right?
your question. Right, right. So like in this study here, right? Notice how we're re-randomizing both responders and non-responders. The reason Connie's saying 40 to 60% is because if you do a study like this, you need a reasonable number of responders and a reasonable number of non-responders because I'm re-randomizing both of them. But imagine, I need you guys now I understand Connie's question very well. I want you guys to imagine, okay, imagine a study that where we only re-randomize non-responders, the slow responders. All right. Well, if we only re-randomize slow responders, we're happy if we ended up with 80 to 90% of slow responders, right? Like that's fine. That doesn't harm us. But what would have happened if we only re-randomized slow responders and we ended up with 10% slow responders? Well, guess what? You're up, you know who's creek, right? It's over. It's bad. So this is another way of thinking about it. So you guys following me here? You following Connie's question? Depending on your trial design, you do need to know something about your non-response rate. The only reason we got away with re-randomizing both responders and slow responders here is because we believed ahead of time that the non-response rate would be somewhere between 40 and 60. Okay, I'll stop there. Yeah. Any other questions? Are you guys having fun? Yeah. Any other questions?
I think we're done, right,
Yep.
Wendy? It's almost the top of the hour, isn't it?
Yep. Well, thank you,
Okay.
Danny. Thank you, everyone who have attended. We do
You're
have our
welcome.
next webinar that's coming this fall, so we'll send out the information when it's once we have a date finalized.
Okay, it was a pleasure. Bye-bye, everyone.